In today's episode, we talk Luke Jackson, will he leave? Tim Kelly's new deal, the death of a legend, and we preview every game in round 10. Welcome to the West Sports Show. We are brought to you by TabTouch. Got the touch? Download the TabTouch app today. What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. I am joined, as I always am on a Thursday, by the West Australians, Mitchell Woodcock. G'day, Mitch. How are you?
Good, Quarters. How are you today?
Good, mate. It's been a very big week of news. You and I both had some stories that were broken and have created quite a bit of conversation in the community. Well, let's start with Luke Jackson. Why don't we?
Yeah, I want to ask you about this one, Quarters. So it's made national headlines. So let's go into the story. So you're expecting Luke Jackson to put in a request for a trade?
Right now, Luke Jackson, there have been denials, which I expected the last couple of days. That's how it rolls, mate, in this world of media. But I stand behind the story. I expect Luke Jackson right now has significant off-field issues and does want to he feels that Melbourne is the best place for him to deal with those, and in particular the Melbourne Football Club. Now, I expect him to request a trade at the end of the season. Having said all of that, I don't expect him to leave because I don't think Fremantle, they hold the key here. He's contracted. They can hold him to his contract, as they should, or go for an ambit claim, go shoot the lights out, go for whatever you can get. So this is interesting where Cozzy Pickett may come into it. We know Fremantle's after Cozzy. So how does that play into it? All this stuff I expect to roll out later in the year. So that's pretty much it, mate. It's pretty simple. He wants to leave.
It's fascinating, isn't it, that this whole storyline? He obviously came a few years ago after the premiership at Melbourne to Fremantle, signed that long-term deal, was meant to be, as described by some people, the unicorn. Mm-hmm. And the missing piece in Fremantle's premiership puzzle.
Well, a unicorn because it's an NBA term and it refers to a player who can play in several positions, which Luke Jackson certainly can.
So he goes back to Melbourne. Is this do you feel, a thing that'll end up with, or possibly end up if he gets back there, to succeed a Max Gawn?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Max is 34, 35. He's playing at arguably the best form of his life.
100%.
But the role he plays, it's a combative role, and he's going to be a pretty sore boy. So, his career is coming to an end, and I think that, maybe 2-3 years down the track. So I think that would very much be in Melbourne's eyes. And we've got to give credit to Mitch Cleary, who sort of broke the story earlier in the year about Melbourne having significant interest and Luke Jackson being a watch. But this week, I think, it's my belief that, the last few weeks, it has it moved into an area now where Luke actually does want to leave, and there will be continual denials. But I remind people that at this stage last year, or around about this stage, we asked Tom Barrass exactly the same question, and Tom's answer was, no, these are just stories that fly around in the media at the time, and of course he ended up at Hawthorn, didn't he?
There's a fascination, I will say, in the AFL world where these sort of things are always moving beasts as well. So it does change on a dime, and like you said, Tom Barrass at this stage last year was saying he was, unless the rug was pulled out from under him, he was going to be at the Eagles on his contract, and now he's playing at Hawthorn and playing in Darwin tonight. So there's all these fascinations. I'm curious, you said Fremantle obviously hold the power because he's contracted. Mm-hmm. This is a really interesting setup because the talk at the moment is around Sean Darcy and Jackson working together and Darcy's knee, and we believe Liam Reedy's on the flight to Sydney to take on GWS right now. Our reporter Jackson Barrett's down there, and that's the information we're getting. So I'm expecting Sean Darcy not to be on that plane. I know it's a minor knee niggle, but it's still a knee niggle to Sean Darcy.
Well, forget about the knee niggle. That's not working at the moment. The ruck partnership's not working. So where does that lead at the end of the season? Do they look to trade Sean Darcy out? Do they go for a Cameron at Collingwood, to try and because we know the Eagles are red hot into him, Darcy Cameron. So I think there's a lot to play out as this year unfolds. And, it's a watch. There is plenty of this season to go. So, yes, the Darcy-Jackson combination could still find its way, bear fruit for Fremantle. But right now it's not working.
Question without notice.
I like
the
those.
Responsibility for the partnership of Darcy and Jackson largely in a lot of attention falls on Darcy, mainly because of his fitness issues and the fact that he probably can only play ruck or not really play much forward. Do we not put enough attention into the fact that Jackson hasn't developed as his forward craft, as much as we probably should. And is that his responsibility as well as to have made that work? I feel like we sometimes miss that he's not really developed that area of his game.
Well, I think Fremantle this season have looked better when he has been in the ruck.
100%. And when Pat Voss is there, is with him.
But the metrics from the past 2 years tell us that their winning percentage is greater when Darcy is their first ruck. So clearly Justin Longmuir is going on those metrics, and that's fair enough. But on the body of evidence this year, it hasn't. But remember, Darcy's coming off some surgery. He's dropped a lot of weight. I wonder if that hasn't affected his form as well, because he hasn't got the size anymore.
Well, he's not that big body ruckman anymore, but he's not that
and
mobile ruckman.
Well, he's never going to really be a Max Gawn type, is he?
No.
Who can slip down deep into down the line, take that match-saving mark. It's not really his role. His role is pure ruck.
You take one strength away.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, and I understand why they're doing it. And I know there's been people critical of Darcy's fitness in the previous years, rightly or wrongly. So, you credit where credit's due for doing that to get his body right. But you wonder if you've gone too far the wrong way. It's a very curious situation, is what I will say.
Now, the other big story this week, broken by you, Mitch, was the Tim Kelly another 2 years at West Coast.
Yeah, so Tim Kelly has an offer on the table for 2 more years at West Coast. His manager, Anthony van der Wielen, is currently overseas on a holiday. He was at the UFC at the weekend, actually, to watch Jack Della Maddalena fight.
You're excited about the UFC.
Yeah, I'm going to up and about that, but this is a footy show, so we'll stick with this. So Tim's got a 2-year off on the table. I expect that to be done in the coming weeks when Anthony returns from the USA. So obviously, interesting season for Tim Kelly. Started before the Indigenous game, where he admitted he'd sort of fallen out of love with the game. Was dropped after the Greater Western Sydney loss in round 4. He had a gather round. That obviously made headlines. We broke that as well. And then he had the toe injury, which kept him out of the game against Hawthorn a few weeks later. And then at the weekend, he played as a forward. Did not attend one centre bounce at the weekend, which I don't know the numbers, but I dare say it would be, if not the first, one of a very rare occasion.
So
that he
as
hasn't
West
done that.
Coast sort of, and Andrew McQualter's throwing the magnets around, we've seen this, a very young midfield. Where does Tim Kelly play the next 2 years? Is it as a midfielder or is it as a high forward?
We spoke about this a few weeks ago. I like the high forward role for Tim Kelly. His best footy he played at Geelong, he averaged 25 disposals and kicked 24 goals in 24 games. And that was his last year there. He was an All-Australian. He was named on the wing, but I don't take positions in All-Australian sides seriously, I must admit, outside of a few of them. So he actually played predominantly as that high half forward at the time. I think it's his best position. I don't think he's ever been the number one banana in the midfield. I think when he came over here, he wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be Gaff, Shuey, Yo, Kelly. It was meant to be a collective, and it's injuries, and we know the story that it's just never happened. So I actually don't mind it. What it's allowing them to do, I thought they looked good at the weekend with Brockman and Ryan running through there. It adds a bit of dynamic change to them, and
Ryan,
this is what Andrew McQualter said.
4 centre clearances, so I like him in there.
And it works well. It complements Jack Graham, who's second in the AFL for tackles at the moment. He had 20 disposals and 13 tackles and about 6 clearances. He was quite good in there as well. Harley Reid. And then I think we're going to see Tom Gross a little bit more in the coming weeks.
I hope so.
And I don't think that sub-vest will be on. But interestingly, Andrew McQualter spoke about it today, and he did say, he hinted that Kelly's forward move was something that's going to be pushed through in the next few weeks and continued on. And I could actually see it being a really handy role for West Coast. He allows him to push up to that stoppage to help level the clearances, but his skills forward of centre is where it's really dangerous. And I don't think Tim's ever been a massively defensively orientated player, and that's okay. Sometimes we focus on what players can't do instead of what they can do. His attacking flair and his nous for delivery is going to make players like Jake Waterman better. And I think if they're going to move him there, I think it's a good option.
What about Liam Ryan? Is this a permanent move into the midfield? I dare I say he's no longer Flying Ryan. He's now Roman Ryan. But do you think it's a permanent?
I like that. I think it's actually, I think they're modelling it off the Cozzy Pickett, Shea Bolton sort of model where he starts in the midfield, someone else will push up from half forward and he'll go into more of an attacking area. Whereas a Tyler Brockman is actually more of a defensive midfielder, laid a lot of tackles and put a lot of pressure on. And then, like I said, you got Jack Graham, who does that. Harley Hoff moved into the midfield. Interestingly,
Hutchinson.
Yeah, he's on a wing at the moment. Jamie Cripps is on a wing at times at the moment as well. So
Good
they're
form
definitely
for Jamie Cripps last week too.
He was fantastic. But they're changing the way they do things at the moment, West Coast. They're throwing the magnets around.
Good.
They're playing a system-based game where positions matter, but I don't think they matter as such of like you're a half forward and that's what you are. I think it's this is the role we're playing here. That's the player that's now playing in that role, and they're working out who's best for it. I wouldn't be shocked when Tyrell Dewar comes back into the team if he's actually playing off halfback, because that's what he's been doing at waffle level the last 2 weeks. So I think they want that speed and that delivery off halfback. That might be allow them to then push maybe a Baker into the midfield again and maybe free that up. But it just allows them to be a bit more diverse and a bit different, because Dewar can play half forward, wing, half back. He could almost be that Wanganeen Miller style player where you can throw him where you need him. I know that's a big comparison, but there's these abilities to do that. So I kind of like what McQualter's doing. It's not resulting in wins at the moment.
They went very close. One tackle short last week.
100%. And I'll get to Tom Gross in a second, but I just like the way, the more I see it, the more I like it. And I think Eagles fans should be confident in what Andrew McQualter's doing. He's taking a lot of short-term pain, and he knows this. But I think he's looking at the positives of it and going, we're going to be a lot better for this a lot quicker than people think.
So Tom Gross, we spoke about this on the podcast on Tuesday, but I love the fact that he was only out there for a short time, but he had an impact. And I love the fact that he gets himself into positions where he wants to, shape the game. So, yes, he was tackled. A great tackle by Tom Brown, by the way. But they should actually have a tackle award in the AFL.
Oh, that was the tackle of the year, isn't it?
But Tom Gross, look, yes, he had a bounce when he could have had a couple more steps. But you know what? He's young. So you can't really hang him for that. I love the fact he was in a position where he wanted to shape the game. So I just applaud it. And I've got a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot more of Tom Gross in the future.
Again, spoke to Andrew McQualter at his press conference this morning. And he was saying that Luke Shuey showed him some highlights, Tom Gross, some highlights of him getting tackled early in his career. We know what kind of player Luke Shuey was. Probably one of those ones unlucky to never be an All-Australian and got a Norm Smith medal in one of the great grand final performances of the last 20 years.
Yes.
So I think that's a positive. I think I would rather want a player to win the game at that age than a tentative player on the AFL stage. Don't forget, I know it wasn't the biggest of crowds at the MCG. It was a Sunday morning over here, early Sunday Arvo game over there. But when you're there, and people who've been to the MCG will understand this, and I know you will, Quarters, you've been plenty of times, it's still a big game feel when you walk into the MCG, regardless of who's playing. It's still a big stage feel.
Oh, yeah,
and so for that young man in what was probably the 18th minute of his game in that day, with West Coast winless, and he's taken it on his shoulders to win the game. If I'm Andrew McQualter, of course there was the frustration of the tackle. They were so close to winning. Could he have kicked it? Could he have found Liam Ryan? I don't know. But I just love the fact that long term you could look at this guy and go, one day that tackle's not going to be there and he's going to kick a match winner, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's in a big final.
Mitch, the hairs on the back of my neck go up when I walk into the MCG every single time. And that's just as a member of the media or as a punter. It just has that effect on you.
100%. Obviously I follow West Coast quite a lot, as we know. And the last few years, I've only been there 4 times in the last 3 years because there haven't been the team that's played at the MCG.
A lot at Marvel.
Even though we're going to play Collingwood later this year, it's at Marvel Stadium. And Marvel is a lovely venue, don't get me wrong, but MCG, you just walk in and you feel the history just...
Oh, it just falls on you, doesn't it? It envelops you.
You walk through the corridor in the media room and people wouldn't know this, but there's photos of past players and greats and stamps and just statues and memorabilia and Norm Smiths and footy. But I don't know, it's hard to explain when you're not there often enough. And then when you go there, it's just this overwhelming feeling. 4 or 5
make their debuts at the MCG last week, didn't they?
Yeah, a good handful, yeah. Yes. It was quite incredible. So I thought their performance was really good. I can see a lot more bright sparks in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Now, we'll get on to our tips in just a moment, but a bit of sobering news, Mitch, and very, very sad day for football in general, particularly the AFL, with the passing of Robert Walls. 74 years of age, a voluntary assisted death. He had a form of blood cancer and took that choice, and I think that's great, for him to be able to do that in this day and age, having witnessed his wife suffer from cancer in her 50s, and he lost her. So I think you look at Robert Walls, 259 games for Carlton and Fitzroy. It's 14 years as a player, 16 years as a coach, and 25 years as a commentator. Coached 4 clubs, Fitzroy, Carlton, Brisbane and Richmond. Was an innovator as a coach. First player coach to roll out the huddle. So you had the group of players clustered at sort of centre-half back when you were kicking out, and then they'd spread. So, he was a forward thinker. Had his moments with the media. It was pretty feisty with the media. I was in a couple of media packs where it was pretty feisty. but always spoke his mind, was very forthright, as I said, very lateral thinking about the game. Wonderful contributor to Australian football. And unfortunately, he spent 250 days in hospital the last 2 years. So, our thoughts go to his family, all his friends. There's a beautiful tribute from Mike Sheehan in the Herald Sun today. And he'll be missed. I know my brother did a lot of commentary with him at Channel 10, and he thought very highly of Robert Walls. So the AFL has released a statement today, and there will be a lot of tributes rolled out over the next couple of weeks through all the clubs he represented. Of course, he was a premiership coach at Carlton in 1987. One of the greats.
Yeah, I'm obviously a bit of a different vintage to yourself, Quarter. So you would remember the coaching and the
I remember the player, yeah.
And my childhood memory, and even we're sitting in a 7 studio, but I'll say that the footy was on Channel 10 when I was a young man, and my memory of
just
him
for a
is
couple of years, Mitch.
Exactly, but my memory was your brother and him on the Saturday team. Sitting on a Saturday arvo after I've played footy as a kid, and you're watching them and listening to him talk and his assessment of the game. That was it. My thoughts go out to David Walls, the Freo list boss. It's his son. One of the nicest men in football, David Walls. I thoroughly always enjoy talking to him, regardless of if we're talking football or if we're talking about the fact that it's generally around his birthday, the draft day is, and he's looking forward to going and having a beer at a palmy. But so my thoughts on everything goes to his family. Just a genuinely fantastic football people. And I know it's a reality of life that we lose these kind of people, but when we lose everybody at some stage, but when they sort of hit a bit differently, I think. And
they do.
You lose a monumental man of football.
So when I was a kid, I played footy on a Saturday with North Ringwood, and then in the afternoon I'd go and watch the Hawks at Princes Park or wherever they're playing. And on a Sunday I'd play for a team called Park Orchards, which was just up the road. Really muddy ground. Both of them were actually, but not a blade of grass, all mud. But Robert Walls lived nearby, and I remember going to training one night, and they said, we've got a special guest tonight, and Robert Walls walks out with his tracksuit on. I think he was playing with Fitzroy at that stage, the latter part of his career, and took training.
That's fantastic.
And I was in awe. And he was really good. Like he took it to another level, talked to us about a few things that we wouldn't have thought about. I just love the fact that he had the passion for the game and a lot of players do this, but it was one of the highlights of my junior career, just being, under Robbie Wall's wing for a couple of hours at Domini Reserve Park Orchards.
That's so cool. That's one of those great memories you have as a kid, when those AFL legends walk through the door and you get, a couple of hours with them. They don't, I don't think they even realise how much of an impact they have until later on in their life. And so, no, fantastic.
They were the days when you could leave the track and you'd have a pie night. You'd be off the field and they'd have a pie warmer there and you'd just scoff into pies. Gee, they were great nights.
Fantastic.
I wonder if they still do that.
I wish they did.
We'll get to some tips in a moment, but right now let's go to our good friend at Tab Touch, David Short.
Shorty's tips.
G'day, Shorttey.
G'day, Quarters.
How you going, mate?
I'm going beautifully, thank you.
Okay, Jesse Hogan.
He's running hot, isn't he?
He is running hot. He's your hot tip for this week.
Yeah, big time. He was brilliant last week. 7 goals against the Cats in that upset win. He's been accordingly smashed in Coleman medal betting. $6 now into $3.50 favouritism. A
team I picked to play in this year's grand final is not going so well, Sydney.
No, the Red and Whites. Yeah, they are the coolers this week. They've lost 4 of their last 5. They find themselves in 14th spot on the ladder, and injuries to key personnel. It's been a tough season for them so far.
I love the Bloodstone Angels. Come on, do something for us, please. Who's your hot tip?
Hot tip, taking a multi with Gold Coast tonight, then Collingwood, the Western Bulldogs and Brisbane to all win. That's paying $3.61 this weekend.
My boys tonight, any chance?
They're a small chance, but they are on the drift. They're $2.07 out to $2.35, and plenty of support for Gold Coast, who love it up there at TIO Stadium.
7 out of 7. The conditions, they say, are very, very different. The ball drop, everything. So pretty tough. But I reckon if any team's going to get them, it's Hawthorn.
Yeah, they're certainly ticking along quite nicely.
Now, your player to watch this week, I like it.
I do too, and it's a man that has a really good record against the side he's playing against. So we're teaming up with Nick Larkey. He really enjoys playing Richmond. He's kicked bags of 5 and 6 the last 2 times they've met. He's paying $7 to kick the first goal of the game and $3.75 to kick 4 goals or more. I think he'll have a big afternoon, Nick Larkey.
Yeah, I agree. Like it a lot, Shorty. Thanks, mate.
All the best, Quarters.
Righto, Mitch. Let's roll out some tips, and let's start with tonight's game at 5:30 p.m. at TIO Stadium in Darwin. The Gold Coast Suns, $1.54. Hawthorn, $2.45. I'm told it's a sunny day at the moment, but it can turn. Of course, Darwin, the Gold Coast is 7 from their last 7 there, so it's a fortress. It's also a really tough place to play. High humidity, the ball drop's different, everything's different. So Hawthorn's tried to get ahead of that by flying in on Monday. They've made a raft of changes, so in comes Cal Shadir, so that'll be really welcome to that Hawthorn forward line. Jack Scrimshaw, Cam McKenzie and Tom Barrass and Ned Reeves. So they're pretty big in. So Ned Reeves comes in for Lloyd Meek, who's been rested. Jack Gunston's been rested. Jarman Impey's partner is pregnant, so he's being rested as well. Luke Brewster's out with a back and Henry Huswaite, unfortunately, omitted. I thought that was a bit of a surprise omission for me. And really interesting, the Gold Coast, they're playing 2 rucks. So Jared Witts and Ned Moyle comes in. So they've looked at, it's Ned Reeves' first game, and I regard Jared Witts as number 2 ruckman in the competition. Darcy Cameron's up there as well, but behind Max Gawn at the moment. I really rate Jared Witts, and his form, when he doesn't play, they are gettable, that he's playing. So I'm going to tip him, but I think if any team, the way Hawthorn plays, the quick transition, any team can get him, I reckon it's Hawthorn.
So originally my tip was based on the fact that it's up in Darwin and Gold Coast, like you said, a 7 from their last 7, and I can't see that changing. And I'll stick with the Suns. Lloyd Meek out's a big one for me. Like you said, Witts is such a fantastic ruckman. And Jack Gunston out. Like, is there a
Just rested.
Is there a better year for senior
older
players?
Very good point.
Than this year with Gunston, Sidebottom, Pendlebury,
Elliott.
And my question for you, Quarters, is, and I know your Hawthorn hat's on here, Gunston, is he a chance for an All-Australian gig this year?
At the moment, yes.
Yeah, so I think you lose him. Obviously, Cal Shadir is a fantastic young man, and looking forward to seeing him play. I loved watching him last year. I think his contested marking for a man of his size is an absolute weapon, and I actually kind of like the way, I think he is a Gunston mould. So I think it's fantastic. I think they're a rare player, those sort of forwards. But Gunston out's a big one for me.
It is,
so the Suns, I wonder if the Suns will swing a late change depending on the conditions. It's a nice day there, like you said. It can change very quickly, but the humidity's there. So I'm going to go the Suns still, but it wouldn't shock me Hawthorn put up a really good fight. Sam Mitchell's a very smart coach, and I reckon he'll have something planned.
We won't find out this week, but when we do see Mitch Lewis go back into that side, he's about 6 weeks away still, and obviously Cal Shadir returning this week with Gunston. Be really, and Mabby Achol, interesting to see how they structure up, whether their method changes, how they go about it, because heavily reliant on small forwards and medium-sized forwards, Hawthorn at the moment, despite Jack Gunston's been terrific, Mabby Achol's been pretty good. But yeah, really interesting to see whether that dynamic, how it changes and how their game style changes.
Well, and Chol obviously helps back up in the ruck a little bit, which I don't think Lewis will be able to do with that knee early on.
Yep.
So I wouldn't be surprised if Chol gets picked ahead for that reason for a while. That's obviously the reason that they're in the conversation for Oscar Allen too. So you're curious to see what Sam Mitchell does. But like I said, he's up and about at the moment.
SCG Friday night, 5:40 p.m. Sydney, $1.65. Carlton, $2.25. I had a look at this game, and I just can't see Sydney kicking a winning score against Carlton, the way they play. They're a stoppage team, Carlton, and I know it's at the SCG, a ground they know very well, but I'm picking Carlton to win this.
Yeah, I'm going Sydney, but more just the SCG factor and Carlton. I don't trust either of these teams. So when I don't trust either
I trust
team,
Carlton more. I just don't. Sydney has no forward line.
No, they don't. But Joel Amati looks like he might be back, which means they're going to swing Francis down to defence, which will help out. Hamling's actually been okay, but they can play him down back if they need to on one of the two Mackay's and Curnows.
Well, Tom McCartan, our friends from Champion Data have told us that has played on Charlie Curnow twice over the last 5 seasons, conceding 5 and 1 goal in that order, with the most recent, the 2023 semi-final.
Yeah, so I'm going to go Sydney just because of the home ground, but I don't trust either team.
And Will Hayward, look out for him. Never finished goalless against the Blues from 11 career games, averaging 1.5 goals, posting a career-high shot at goal accuracy of 70.8%. I'm a big fan of Will Hayward.
I am too. I just want to see him do it more often than once every fortnight. Him and Zach Bailey, for me, are guys that have got immense talent, but just don't do it on a regular occasion. But that sounds like a good one to put in your multi.
And the battle within a battle, Brady Grundy v Tom De Koning, 2 very different style of ruckmen, so that'll be interesting. And please, Michael Voss, keep Jack Silvani in defence.
And Paddy Cripps out of the ruck.
Yes. So you're going...
I'm going to go the Swans.
Okay. MCG Saturday, 11:20 a.m. Big game this. Collingwood, $1.50. Adelaide Crows, $2.60. I'm picking the Pies. Obviously, it's at the MCG. Coming off a trip, but have had a little bit of rest. I think the key to this, Adelaide simply has to Collingwood's very heavily reliant on forward 50 pressure.
Yes.
Pressure all over the field, but they're a forward half turnover team. So Adelaide just needs to, as hard as it is, they need to get their kick mark game going, basically, and deny Collingwood that forward 50 pressure, and they can win the game. Pretty simple, isn't it?
100%, but, this is footy's always simpler when we talk about it. Dacos, a bit of injury cloud.
Yep.
Curious to see if he plays. Adelaide's forward line can stretch Collingwood's defence.
Yeah.
Thilthorpe.
Well, they were but really, they won the showdown on the back of Thilthorpe, didn't they?
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of him going into the ruck as much. I understand why they do it, and he's effective there, but I think he's more dangerous out of the goal square. And I'm a big fan of Riley Thilthorpe, have been since the start of the season.
Have you ever seen more finger tape on a player than you've seen on Riley Thilthorpe?
No.
Every single finger is taped.
Is he going to do a Daniel Chick one day and just cut one off?
No, don't remind me of that, please.
No, look, I'm picking Collingwood because it's at the MCG, but I tell you what, Adelaide win this, and top 4 is on their radar. This is one of those games where they can actually make a stand, I think, the Crows. So if they win this, even with Dacos not playing, possibly not playing, Tagoe not playing, it wouldn't shock me if they put up a really good fight and win, and we're talking about Adelaide next week as a genuine premiership contender. And credit to Matthew Nicks, by the way, who has been under immense pressure the last 3 years. He stuck to his process. He knew they were going to bounce at some stage. We had confidence they were going to bounce, I should say, and they've done it. This is a very smart rebuild from Adelaide. This
is all about efficiency, this game. Collingwood, we know last week against Fremantle, they were 28 fewer inside 50s.
Incredible numbers.
What was 34 inside 50s for 22 scoring shots.
62.
Unbelievable. The Crows were very lucky against Port in the showdown last week. Port were profligate, Mitch. I love that word. They squandered their opportunities, and they had plenty of them in the last quarter. Adelaide, on the other hand, had a season-low 41 inside 50s in the showdown, but scored from 58.9% of entries, ranked second for the round, no doubt behind Collingwood. So I think this comes down to efficiency. I'm picking Collingwood, however.
Question, do we overrate inside 50s? We feel like we need a monitor.
No, because that's where you kick goals.
But I feel like we need a stat that says inside 50s as opposed to good inside 50s, because Fremantle had 62 at the weekend, and I reckon 20 of them were barely rated.
Yeah, well, that's what they call dirty ball, Mitch. That's up to the opposition midfield to put pressure on so that you can kick it where you don't want to kick it into the inside
100%. I just think sometimes it's, a Hayden Young inside 50 versus maybe a Corey Wagner. No disrespect to Corey Wagner, inside 50, though, is a bit different.
Saturday, 2:15 p.m, Adelaide Oval. Port Adelaide, $2.20. Geelong, $1.67. Geelong defensively minus quite a few players. So I've got Port winning this one purely because it's at home, Mitch. I didn't mind their game against Adelaide last week. They did everything but win it. Geelong just stumbling a little bit at the moment, despite, we've obviously seen Patrick Dangerfield in career best form. Bailey Smith slotted in there beautifully. They've got a lot of run and carry from that midfield. They're very quick. But I just think Port at home, I'm loath to pick against them, even though I'm nervous about this game.
Yeah, I'm going Port at home as well. Really excited to see probably the two most electric players in the AFL right now in Bailey Smith and Zach Butters. They're watchable. They are the most watchable players right now, outside of a Dacos and a Bontempelli in the AFL right now. So to watch them on a Saturday afternoon is one of those quite nice luxuries, I think. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Bailey Smith can do.
Smith and Max Holmes, they're two very hard players to stop.
And Dangerfield is a forward. We obviously know what's happening there, but then his ability to still play midfield. So, look, I'm with you, Quarters. I think Adelaide Oval, tipping the power. But this is just it's a watchable game for me. I'm going to sit back as a footy punter. Obviously, we'll watch the Freo game first, but I'm going to go back and watch this replay just for the fact that I want to see how this goes.
So the first of our local games, let's call them that, NG Stadium, Saturday, 2:15 p.m, GWS $1.36, Fremantle $3.15. GWS were struggling, but what a great win at GMHBA last weekend, 5 from 5 now at that stadium. This is home. This is back home. I haven't played there for a while, so I'm pretty confident in picking the Giants, particularly now that I hear that Liam Reedy is on the plane. So that matchup, Kieran Briggs, Luke Jackson, Patrick Voss, maybe a Liam Reedy, it's going to be really interesting.
100%. I'm picking the Giants. I've got more confidence in them at the moment. Fremantle are too inconsistent. The Giants are just a fascinating watch for me. I know they've got to have a different media presence given the market, but is there a more open club? The vision, did you see the vision of Kingsley of the week, addressing the game with the mums in the room and the family? Just, they do things and open up their club differently to other clubs, and I know the reason why, but I find them just enjoyable for those reasons, and I love watching them play. Jesse Hogan.
Yeah, Jesse Hogan, Alex Pearce.
Yeah, I did a story on this today with Anthony Grover, but interestingly, Fremantle are the worst team in the competition for winning one-on-one contests. It's only 39%. So, Jesse Hogan,
coming off a 7-goal haul at Geelong, which is hard to do.
But he's also the second best player for one-on-one contests in the AFL. So, what does that tell you? He's the key. He's the key to victory. I know one player doesn't always win your game, but Alex Pearce, he didn't play last year on Jesse Hogan. He had that injury. Brennan Cox copped a bit. 5 of his 6 goals were kicked on Cox. So this is a big matchup for the skipper. If the skipper gets this one right for Fremantle, they probably win. But if Hogan gets going and kicks more than 3 or 4, the Giants will win.
A lot of grunt players in this game, what I call grunt players. So you got Sarong, you got Brayshaw, you got Tom Green, Finn Callaghan, and of course Toby Green, who can go through the middle. We know what his calibre is in the forward line. He's such a good player. So it's going to be a good matchup. It'll be down and dirty, but I'm expecting GWS to win.
Do you think that the Fremantle Dockers look at what Sydney did with Sam Taylor and Buckley a few weeks ago, where they essentially tagged them as defenders? And West Coast did it as well. I remember Oscar Allen played on Sam Taylor for that as well, just to take them out of the game and then rely on the smalls. And is this where we see a Shea Bolton up forward a little bit more? Like, I'm curious to see
I like him in the middle, though. I liked him last week. I think he added a dimension they didn't have.
But I'm curious to see how they do this, because they struggled to score last week. And Sam Taylor and Buckley, they don't let you score.
Yeah.
So a fascinating watch at either end of the ground, but Giants for me.
Well, they got Shea to the club for that very reason, and now you're playing him a lot more in the midfield. So
you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but without Hayden Young, you really don't have a choice right now.
Marvel Stadium Saturday, Western Bulldogs $1.26, Essendon $3.85, going along nicely, the Western Bulldogs, but so are Essendon. But this is the first real test for Essendon. Are they the real deal? Are they a top 8 contender? I'm still to be convinced, which is why I'm tipping the Western Bulldogs in this game. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going the Bulldogs. Love watching Nate Caddy play. If it wasn't for Langford at Melbourne, he'd be my favourite for the Rising Star right now, but he's a close second. Interestingly, how's the news this morning that the Bulldogs have moved that game from Adelaide from Ballarat? So, I didn't like the Ballarat look a few weeks ago, personally.
Well, it's under reconstruction, so you can't have machinery in the background as you...
It looked like they were playing in half a warehouse. Like, I don't know. It just looked strange. And so I like the move back. The Bulldogs, amazing the fact they've got to where they are with the injuries they've had. Love the moves that they make. Beveridge is coaching better than ever. Bonampelli's going to be better every week. Darcy is obviously not there, so that hurts from both a viewer perspective and a forward line perspective. But Rory Lobb's gone up forward, signed a new contract this week, by the way.
They flip him around a lot. One player who we haven't mentioned who's gone under the radar a bit in recent is Tim English. He's been in really good form. Yeah,
he'd be in the All-Australians. But right now be gone, Darcy Cameron and Tim English in that All-Australian conversation. So really loving the way they go about it. Obviously, Essendon, we talk about rucks though, then they've got Goldstein who are massively great.
So this is where they can get a big advantage here. And not surprisingly, since round 6, the Dogs have won the centre bounce clearances by 7.5 per game on average, ranked number 1. So there you go.
That's it, yeah. So the Bulldogs for me, but a fascinating game.
And well done to Zach Merritt too, just having one hell of a season, isn't he? Definitely an All-Australian.
Dude, I think I said about round 3 that Brownlow watched for him, and I stand by it. They've won 5 of their last 6, I think it was.
Yep.
So, how many votes does he polled in that? Probably 10 to 15. Yeah. So, look out.
And their defensive profile, which is something we have criticised heavily about with the Bombers in recent times. That has improved significantly. However, they have been winnable games. So this is a real test for them against the side that does score.
Zach Reid, the brother of Archer Reid at West Coast,
having a great season.
A revelation.
Bedded down at centre half back.
Well, imagine those two. Same team.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah, absolutely. MCG, Sunday, 11:10 a.m. Up nice and early in Western Australia to watch this one. Richmond, $2.40. North Melbourne, $1.58. Fascinating game, this, because there's a lot to like about the Tigers. The youth is compelling. But I think North's got the edge here. I just think a little bit more experience in that midfield. And I mean, I'm a big fan of Toby Nankervis, but Tristan Sherry's game last week was one out of the box. He is a terrific ruckman. I just think a little bit more experience in the midfield. And I've just got a feeling this week, Nick Larkey, there's a bag awaiting him, I reckon.
Yeah, interestingly, obviously Noah Bolter can play this game, so that'll be handy for Richmond for obvious reasons. Interestingly, a few weeks ago, you would have probably said that this is one of those games that you could skip. And then you watched Richmond and West Coast last week, 15 lead changes. It was a thrilling game.
Every chance this is the match of the round.
And North went down to down south, down to the Apple Isle, and took it to Brisbane and got a draw. Probably should have won. Fantastic effort by them. I'm going the Tigers just because they don't travel. They're at the MCG. I think they play the G a bit better than North Melbourne. And I like their kids. I think Tom Lynch is in good form.
What about Sims? Sims looks like a player, doesn't he?
Looks like a really good player. Taranto and Hopper are playing excellent football. I like the way they're moving, Tigers. So for me, that's them at the moment. North Melbourne are a little bit inconsistent.
Okay.
But
you're going with the Tigers.
I'm going to go with the Tigers.
I'm going with North. There you go. Sunday, 1:20 p.m. Brisbane, $1.16. Melbourne, $5.10. This is at the Gabba, Mitch.
Easy.
There's your argument.
Brisbane.
Yeah, I can't see Melbourne threatening. They were very good against Hawthorn for 3 quarters and then fell away. So can't put 4 quarters together. I think Brisbane at the Gabba gets it done, don't you?
100%.
Coming off a bit of a slog though.
Yeah, and I still don't trust Melbourne's system. I don't know how they're going to score enough. Brisbane's defence is quite tidy. It's underrated, I actually feel. And so I'm curious to see where they go with this. But yeah, to me, it's Brisbane.
A couple of interesting players. Josh Dunkley averages 28.2 disposals from 9 career games against Melbourne, his highest average against any team. Cozzy Pickett, this is the team he likes playing against the most, averages 2.6 goals against Brisbane, booted 5 goals when these teams last met. And of course, it goes without saying, Max Gawn, number 1 ruckman of the competition at the moment. Clayton Oliver, does he get a tagging job?
Yes.
Lockie Neal.
100%. 100%, yep. Because I know it's criticised, but you know what? Doesn't matter how much you're worth. You need him in the team at the moment. You need him to play.
Final game of the round and the local game, Optus Stadium, Sunday, 2:40 p.m. West Coast, 3:20, St Kilda, $1.35. We have spoken about West Coast a lot earlier in this podcast, but this is a very winnable game for them. We expect Oscar Allen to play.
Yeah, he got through, the training we were allowed to watch today, so 20 minutes.
So what came out of today's
training?
training?
So he said this morning on radio, Oscar Allen, that he would be playing. Andrew McCalter said essentially the same thing, albeit mentioned that he had to get through training, which he didn't last week with that knee injury, obviously a late withdrawal with Harry Edwards coming in. I'm curious to where he plays. I'm not 100% sure he plays down back. I think they're going to stick with Harry Edwards and Sandy Brock. I thought both of them performed really well.
That's a good call.
I thought Harry Edwards on Tom Lynch.
And Andrew McCalder did flag that he would still, while you expect Oscar to play more down back, there will be opportunities.
Well, and he said today it's a conversation they're having every week. I think Archer Reid needs a rest.
Yep.
I've said this for about 3 weeks now. I thought he really needed a rest at the weekend. He had no impact. And this is not a slight on Archer Reid. He just is tired after playing 9 games as a key position player in the ruck and up forward as a 19-year-old. So I wouldn't mind seeing the Oscar and Waterman show in attack. Bailey Williams looked really good as that forward ruck.
He did.
So, and then if you needed to, you could pull that back. Slight concern around Matt Flynn. Looked like he was talking to the physio about a groin injury at training. He was touching that area, tried to do some jump throughs, had a bit of a rub down, got up, did the rest of what was session that we saw. But I'm just going to flag that at the moment. Don't be surprised if he's slightly in doubt.
A lot to like about the Eagles last week. Had 71 tackles and a pressure factor of 192, both season highs. So they're heading in the right direction. All we want from West Coast is effort, don't we?
Yeah, under 5 goals would this be a good one. I don't think St Kilda will put much more on that than them. It's a winnable game. I'm tipping the Saints because I think Ross's system base will impact West Coast's new style. I think West Coast is still learning this style, obviously, and they're not perfected at it yet. Whereas Ross, he'll be able to shut this down because of those. You'd back him to shut it down normally. When it's not perfected, you'd back him to shut it down a bit more. So I'm going with that. Curious to see, Ross is the first one that had tagged Harley last year. And we know Harley got suspended for that Darcy Wilson tackle.
Windhager, yeah.
When did they go it again?
Of course they do.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Why wouldn't you?
It's one of those great games, one of those great little matchups in the matchups.
Now, just to one from left field, just to celebrate a milestone this weekend, boundary umpiring legend Nathan Doig. I wonder if he's related to the famous Doig medal family. Will umpire his 400th AFL match on Sunday during the Eagles v St Kilda game at Optus Stadium. the 5-time AFL Grand Final umpire and 2-time All-Australian, will become only the 5th boundary umpire to reach 400 AFL games. Well done to you, Nathan Doig. Throw them in well.
100%. And I always admire the boundary umpires. They do a lot of running for not a lot of football.
They do.
It's like the high half forward role. But no, congratulations and look forward to seeing him run out there. And interestingly, umpires obviously in the spotlight this week for various reasons, but this is a good news story for that one.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Favourite time of the week, Mitch? Thirsty Camel mailbag. This week's special, Wild Turkey, 81 bourbon, 1 litre, only $69.99 a bottle. We'll be giving away a $50 digital voucher thanks to Thirsty Camel in just a few moments. Get your questions in for next week to TheWestSport at wanews.com.au. Please include your mobile number at the bottom of your email as we will send you a digital voucher if you're a weekly winner. Some very good mail this week, Mitch, and a bit of a funky one. So, hi, boys. This is from Joel from Carlisle. How much do you value finals experience? As a supporter, that's what concerns me the most, that they risk missing out on gaining that experience again. This year's obviously a Fremantle supporter. If I remember correctly, before 2013, they had 3 consecutive seasons in the finals. Meanwhile, the Hawks' young side is gained valuable experience last year and looks set to return to the finals. The Suns are building nicely too. Both teams I'd compare to Freo. As Quarters says, footy years are like dog years, and Freo needs to start banking that experience. Their key defenders, arguably their biggest strength, aren't getting any younger.
Yeah, I do value finals experience. Of course you do. But, you know, you only have to look at Hawthorn in 2008. I know they had a little bit of finals experience, but they were a very young side. They can still do it. The Bulldogs
Essendon in 1993, long time ago.
Yeah, the Bulldogs in
2015.
16?
16, sorry.
16, yeah, sorry. So there's different ways to win the flag. So, yeah, obviously you do value it, but I still think if Fremantle made it and they were playing their best football with that list, then, yeah, they're a chance.
Hey guys, love the pod. Keep up the great content. My question is, with Jackson looking to leave, would it be too optimistic to suggest that Freo have a solid chance of swapping him for Cozzy and using the Jackson paycheck to lure Darcy Cameron West, given his free agency status? I wrote this the other day, Mitch. If this were to happen, would you consider it a better team next year without Jackson, or is it wishful thinking? Also, what does Will Brodie have to do to get a game? No, I don't think it's a better team without Luke Jackson. I rate him really highly. And I think Fremantle will dig their heels in and keep him. But he if he does leave, then absolutely have a crack at Cameron. But I reckon West Coast invested in that.
Yeah, I think West Coast around the mark with that. He's got another year on his contracts into next year. The problem for West Coast is that you got to give up a pick to get Darcy Cameron. They're probably going to have pick one. Well, they've got pick 1 at the moment, would suggest.
And maybe 2 if Oscar leaves, and maybe some more.
But, you know, you've got to find a way to probably get another first-round pick later in the draft.
Okay.
So then you've got to look at the options. And I'm just saying you've got to give something to get something. And right now, West Coast are unable to really do much in the player market. So, for example, and I'll go back to the Tim Kelly deal. Some people are criticising the Kelly deal, but they need experience in this side. They can't go and get a free agent this year. If they lose Oscar Allen for pick 2, if they get a free agent, that dilutes that pick. So then it becomes redundant to get Oscar Allen. And they can't really afford to give away draft picks at the trade table at the moment, given the situation they're in. So signing Kelly that's part of the reason, would be my assumption, and it makes deals like this very hard for West Coast.
What about Will Brodie? Now, we've asked the question in the past, and they say he's still trying to develop his game. So by that, I mean two-way running, right?
Yeah.
Why can he not get a game?
I think he's just too similar to Caleb Sarong and Andrew Brayshaw, and I think they're just better at what he does. I find it fascinating. He had that one really good year then had about...
First year.
And then he got a 4-year deal or a 3-year deal at the club that expires next year, and I think he's played only a handful of games since. So
if you're Will Brodie, would you like to get walked down the road to the Eagles for nothing? As long as the Eagles don't cough anything up, why wouldn't you have him in your squad?
I think you could, but I also think you're at the same situation at West Coast because they're going to prioritise youth, and I don't think he suits the McQualter style. He's not fast enough. I wouldn't bank on it being maybe a Melbourne move to a Demons or even a Collingwood. I think he would suit what Tom Mitchell used to do there, and I think they miss
Tom's
at
due
times.
back.
Yeah, but he's also got that injury history, and Pendlebury and Sidebottom are on the wrong, even though they're playing excellent football. Just wouldn't surprise me if one of those teams, even a Brisbane, could look at a Brodie because you can always have a little bit of inside grunt. It was Gold Coast.
Yeah.
It was a first-round pick. So, yeah, fascinating with him, isn't it, with that area?
It is. Do you think the 4-umpire system is working? How the Cozzy Pickett trip wasn't picked up last weekend staggers me, not to mention the Lockie Schultz mess. Des from Mandurah. Absolutely. I mean, the Lockie Schultz, they've admitted fault. It's been so confusing, the just the aftermath of that and the incident itself. It was horrible viewing.
There were people on the satellite that saw Cozzy Pickett get tripped and knew it was a.
Yeah.
I have a problem with the 4 umpire system.
So do I.
For one reason only, for my opinion, is that I think they wait for the other one to make a call. So I think they think so if someone's seen that, I think they wait for the closer umpire to make the call, and they don't want to always override it unless they're a very senior umpire.
Of course.
So when you've got a bunch of umpires around the same seniority, games-wise or experience-wise, I think they hesitate and they don't call because they think the other bloke should call and they don't want to override it.
But in this situation, that was their claim. But then we saw the audio was revealed on Channel 7 and we knew that Schultz was in trouble.
Yeah, so there's the Schultz thing, there's the Pickett thing. I just think...
The Pickett one, that's just... How was that not picked
That's
up?
what I mean. You could see that from the satellite.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. My problem with it is there's too many umpires because I think they're not backing themselves then. They're relying on the other one to either make the mistake or not make the mistake. So go back to the 3 umpires, one in 150, one in 150, one in the middle of the ground, rotate every quarter, work it out from there.
Strap yourself in for this one. This one's from Jeff from Bassendean.
Oh, Jeff.
Wanted to get your thoughts on what is surely an easy pre-game or halftime entertainment idea for the Eagles or Dockers games instead of the usual stuff that is growing stale. Here you go. 2 former players each week mic'd up playing a game of horse, like on the basketball court, but with goal kicking. One player attempts a shot from somewhere, and if he gets it and the other player can't match it, he gets a letter H and so on. You'd get guys attempting boundary check sides, torps, opposite foot shots, every turn. Even turn it into a championship among former players with a bracket-style tournament across the course of the season. Would be great viewing and the crowd would be fully engaged. How could this fail?
Well, Jeff, what I will say is that
if
you want to
I have some of what you're on?
Jeff, if you want to see something like that, I think there's a little YouTube video of the great Glen Quartermain against the great Adrian Barrett somewhere on the Channel 7 or the West YouTube channels. So if you get a little bit bored at halftime tonight of the footy,
that's right.
I might suggest watching that because I thought that was quite funny.
My kicking boots on that day, I don't think, and Barra hasn't lost it.
Oh, yeah, has he? But I would suggest that might be a bit more entertaining than watching a couple of former players play. No one did a hammy though. That was my main concern. But yeah, no, interesting. Probably not. But I like innovative thinking.
I do too. Paul from Balcatta, with the game on the line, why wasn't Tim Kelly on the ground for the final centre bounce against Richmond? He spent the last 5 minutes on the bench. Did McQualter miss a trick or was he trying to show faith in the young guns? I actually like the fact that the kids were out there.
Yeah, I think it could be a bit of both. So I think it could be the fact he's putting the young guns out there, like we've already spoke about Gross taking the game on. And then there's always the trick that sometimes getting players off the bench is actually a lot more difficult in modern football.
Well, we've seen it. We've seen them stuck on the bench frustratingly for 10 minutes.
So I don't know the thinking behind it. I'm not 100% sure, but wouldn't surprise me if it's a bit of both, is all I'll say.
Jim from Fremantle, Sean Darcy isn't fit enough to survive a full season if Jackson goes. Does Liam Reedy and Pat Voss have enough talent to cover him, or will the Dockers look for a veteran backup?
Don't have to look for a veteran backup. I can say that they're very impressed with Aiden Riddle, a rookie they've got. They really like what he's doing. He's a little while off. I think Max Noble, if he hadn't got swept out from under their noses to Gold Coast, would have actually been around the mark this year too. They really liked what he was doing in the reserves at Peel. I know that feels like a long way off, but they liked him developing, and I know Gold Coast actually really like him too. That's why they stole him essentially from under the Dockers' noses. So, yeah, I don't know. Like we said, they're in the position where if they don't want Jackson to go, Jackson's staying. He signed the contract. Yeah. So it's a lot to play out with the Darcy-Jackson situation. It's a bit of a horror and a bit of a mess for Fremantle.
The player I'd look at just is Ned Reeves, who's returning this week for his first game of the season, tonight, I should say, in Darwin. Lloyd Meeks got that spot locked up now, so Ned Reeves could be gettable.
Yeah, 100%. And, Meeks, I think, looking like he's going to sign a 4 or 5 year deal at Hawthorn, so he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Paul from Balcatta, I'm calling it. You win this week for the Tim Kelly question. I liked it. You win this week's Thirsty Camel voucher. Well done to you. We have been brought to you by Tab Touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today. What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Remember, you can watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube Music, Mitch. Leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to follow this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Always a pleasure, Mitch. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Quarters.
Talk to you next week.